welcome to a podcast about something where each week we dive deep into whatever it is we find interesting. I'm your host, Calvin, and joining me from Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's your co-host, Nick Richardson.
It is fucking hot.
Yeah, Albuquerque gets hot. Did you throw any pizzas on any roofs today?
You know, I was thinking about that pizza I threw on a roof earlier, but I didn't want to come out of the gate. It just sounded crazy. So, thanks for mentioning that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. That is, to this day, my wife's favorite scene in the show, and sometimes, I'll just send her the clip of it to make her laugh.
I mean, it's a great scene, and especially learning the fact that they had to do that 100 times. It's like, yes.
I thought he got it the first time. I thought that's what I read, that he got it the first time.
See, I could have swore I read that he had to do it a bunch.
It could be. I thought what I read is that he got it the first time, but since then, a bunch of people go to that house and throw pizzas on the roof.
I don't know if I'd have a big problem with that. I put a couple tarps down.
Scoop them up at the end of the day.
Oh, fuck yeah, man.
Donate them. So if you guys don't know what we're talking about or didn't read the description or the title of this episode, we're talking Breaking Bad, specifically people who Walter White killed or was responsible for their deaths. A little bit of gray area there, whether he actually physically killed them or if he was the reason that they died. But we're going to go mostly into the people that he was the reason they died.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into this because it's a complicated evolution and, there's a lot to be said for each person he kills. I mean, it's significant in its own right.
It's a longer list than I was expecting. I kind of, as I did my last rewatch, I'm thinking of okay, how can we do a Breaking Bad episode? Because there's so much in Breaking Bad, and I didn't want to just talk about the show as a whole, because that's been done to death at this point. The show ended 6 years ago, so I wanted to do something interesting and more specific, and then I was just oh, a lot of people die. Let's focus on that.
Bring on the death. Woo.
So there's this theory out there that started on Reddit, and I will try to find the link before this goes up so I can include it in the show notes to the original Reddit post, that when he kills someone or is responsible for their death, Walter White that is, he kind of absorbs part of their personality or a personality quirk or a physical feature, something like that. So we're going to try and tie each one of these deaths to how that manifested in Walter after the person died.
Yeah, I read that. I don't know if it was on Reddit or not.
I read it because BuzzFeed and a bunch of other places have put together articles since, but the original thing started on Reddit.
I was gonna say, I think I read it on Cracked.
Yeah, it was probably there too.
I want to say I read it on Cracked, and I thought that theory was really, really fascinating. And when you think about it, especially during a rewatch, you kind of pick up some stuff that I didn't notice the first time for sure.
Exactly, and it's not. He doesn't consciously pick up these traits necessarily. They're mostly subconscious things that happen. He doesn't say, "Oh, that was a cool thing that guy did. I'm going to start doing that." It's almost these background things that you don't even notice unless you're paying attention or you're thinking of this theory as you go through it. So for each death, we're going to talk about who died, when they died, specifically which season, not the date and time, because I don't fucking know. I didn't pay that close attention. How they died, why they died, was the death justified, and what part of that person's identity, mannerisms did Walter assume, if any. Are we good there?
I'm super good on this. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Are the listeners following us?
They better be.
So do you want to do this? Do you want me to just lead everything, or do you want to go back and forth?
Up to you, brother. I don't know.
We really should talk about these things before we start. Let's go back and forth and see how that works. And if it's not working, I'll tell you to stop, and we'll go the other way.
Sounds good.
All right. So I'll go first. The first death that, or deaths, there's two now, that Walter is responsible for are Emilio, Jesse's original partner, and Crazy 8, who are kind of partners in crime at this point. They happen during season 1. They don't happen exactly the same time, but within a couple episodes of each other and for the same reason. So Emilio was gassed in the RV with the poison gas they produced from cooking meth, obviously. And then Crazy 8 was strangled by Walt in Jesse's basement.
which is
Very
heartbreaking as
brutal.
shit.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's very, very brutal.
Because he
Especially
was
because
really, he thought he was kind of getting through to him, and he wasn't at all.
well, yeah, I think Walter let that wall down a little bit,
Mm.
and Emilio,
No, Crazy Eight.
No,
Emilio
that
died
was
in the
Emilio.
RV before they even got back. No,
I thought
Emilio
it was
died in the RV.
Emilio in the basement.
No, it was Crazy Eight. I'm pretty sure.
I
I paid
even
very
remember.
close attention on my last rewatch, which was like 2 months ago. So
You're probably more versed than I am then. But it's, he broke down that barrier. They shared a beer. He made him some Sammys,
yeah,
and it's like,
with the
bro,
crust
you're
cut
gonna,
off.
you're gonna fucking kill me? Like, what's up with that?
And then, well, yeah, and he was about to almost let him go and be like, we're cool if you just chill out. And then Crazy Eight tried to kill Walt or stab him with a plate, and that's when it was over. So basically, the reason they died is they tried to turn on Walt and Jesse. They were going to sell them some of their meth that they cooked, and instead they were going to steal it and kill them out in the desert and just leave them there, basically.
Yeah, also very brutal.
Yeah. So in your mind, was this one justified?
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. Oh, hell yeah. Especially, I mean, when I look at it and Emilio and Crazy Eight are trying to shit on Jesse and Walt, basically, like you said, they're gonna take everything from him. And then, tried to kill Walt. They were bros.
Mm-hmm.
And he still tried to kill him. That piece of shit. He made him Sammy's. Like, I couldn't imagine
Yeah, if
trying
somebody
to
made
kill
me a PB&J, like that, automatically you can't kill that person if they make
With-
you a PB&J.
with
That's
the crust
why
cut off.
my daughter can never kill me, because I make her PB&Js all the time.
Get that insurance policy, folks.
Exactly.
TM. Just
This one's really hard to justify just because of, like you said, how tragic and how, not traumatic, but like just hard it was to watch. And this is Walt's first kill, so it's hard to justify crossing that line when he's mostly a mild-mannered person at this point. But like you said, they were mostly justified. Emilio was kind of an accident because they started shooting up the RV, and they're all just trying to get away, and everything spilled, and the gas came out. He just happened to die. Crazy Eight, though, at the point they killed him, he knew too much that Jesse had told him, because Jesse pretty much told him everything that was going on, and he wasn't gonna spare Jesse or Walt if he was set free. But he kind of just straight up murders him. So
yeah, I mean, especially since he melted I think they were cousins.
yeah,
in
I think so
a
too.
bathtub, which is just a horrendous end of that episode. But something that
Very
I was
gross.
just, oh my god, it's fucking disgusting. But something I just thought about actually is, if you look back on or think back on it, this is when Walt's innocence dies. Like, I don't think another kill affected him quite like this one did. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I find that interesting when I think about it.
Well,
in
yeah,
retrospect.
this is when he made the full turn to like, all right, I'm a bad guy now. He's still.
It's just such a huge leap. You know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Between cooking meth and murder, like that's a very. And it wasn't like, even with Emilio, you could say like, oh, it was an accident. They were trying to run away because they're shooting. He died, but we didn't try to kill him. But with Crazy Eight, like, they just fucking choked him out, or Walt just choked him out. Like, it's straight up murder. And like you said, that's when he kind of turned. And it's hard to go back from that. Once you cross that line, there's no point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a point of no return for sure when you, especially being someone who like helped raise children as a teacher. That's got to be the craziest thing, taking the life of a young man who's basically Jesse's age. Holy shit, that had to, I mean, it obviously did damage him completely, but it's, I think Walt knew. I mean, if he didn't make this choice, he was gonna die, his wife was gonna die, and his son was gonna die. He had too much
Jesse
to
told
lose.
him everything about Walt and who he was. Yeah.
He was just a normal guy put into a situation that was absolutely fucked.
This is a good time as any to bring this up. I read a meme, this was like last year, or maybe the year before. It was like, if you want to know, if you're from a different country and want to know about why America's healthcare system is so fucked up, and this is on topic right now because healthcare reform and Medicare for all that shit's in the news, right? It was like, if you
Oh,
want to
people.
know why healthcare in America is so fucked up, just pay attention to the fact that the best show in America for 7 years was about a teacher who, instead of being able to pay his medical bills, had to turn around and sell meth just in order to pay those bills.
And not leave his family
The meme
destitute.
was, yeah, the meme was much better and more concise. If I can find it, I'll post it with this as well. But it was basically along those lines, is like, and that was like a realistic thing of like, yeah, he couldn't pay his cancer bills, so like this is the only way that he can make enough money to do so.
That was the hook that got me. First, I remember, I don't remember who told me about it, but I remember a person telling me about the premise of the show, and it's just like, well, that sounds weird. And then they're like, yeah, and it's Hal from Malcolm in the Middle. So it's like, oh, fuck, okay,
Well, see,
I'm
I
there.
never watched Malcolm in the Middle. I always knew him as Tim Watley from Seinfeld, the dentist.
I've honestly never, I knew he did the dentist on Seinfeld, but I've never seen him on Seinfeld. I grew up with
He's only in like
Malcolm in the
6
Middle.
episodes, and they're spread out between like 5 seasons. So like you'd have to really catch it.
With that, you actually get, a more developed character, or with Malcolm in the Middle, and he is the goofiest, most ridiculous person on the face of the earth. And then to make
I've
this
heard things.
transition,
Yeah.
oh my god, it's bananas. So that
So
was even more crazy for me to see that first kill for him. It's like, oh my god, Hal just murdered someone. What the fuck?
well, I mean, we know that being a Seinfeld fan, you know Tim Watley has some um some bad proclivities. He would supposedly, as we think, he would, put his patients under the gas and then kind of fool around with them, or at least with them near them. So, Tim Watley, he's not always all up on the up and up.
He's just a pervert instead
Yeah,
of a meth dealing murderer.
exactly.
Bryan
Um,
Cranston, I worry about you, brother.
so the part of the identity that Walt assumed, if you want to simplify it, you could say that he kind of assumes the drug dealing identity from Crazy Eight. And that was the first thing I wrote down because I didn't realize anything else. But then, come season 3, we see Walt making a sandwich for himself, and he's cutting the crust off of it. Which, when he makes his own, so in season 1, when he's making the sandwiches, as we've mentioned for him in Crazy Eight, he only cuts the crust off Crazy Eight's. He eats the crust on his. And then in season 3, we see him making a sandwich for himself, and he cuts the crust off. So that was kind of the thing. Like, he's not thinking about Crazy Eight in that moment. He just starts doing it because that was kind of um, something that Vince Gilligan wanted to portray. Walter White slipping further and further into the bad side of himself.
It exactly.
Because he does these small things that these terrible people did, even though like cutting the crust off your sandwich, it doesn't make you terrible, but the only way he knows of it is from a different terrible person.
Well, that, and it was before he killed that guy. So it's, this was when
Exactly.
things were okay. I think that's more a suppressed memory type deal thing. Shit, I don't understand that shit, but
All of
it's
these things are
really
kind
really
of
weird.
that way. It's not something he consciously does. It's just something that
No,
takes up in his mind and he starts doing
very subliminal.
subconsciously. Yeah. All right. So who we got for death number 2?
Motherfucking Tuco Salamanca.
Damn.
God, he is banana land.
Tuco was a great character.
He was a
In
great
Breaking Bad,
character.
he was great. In Better Call Saul, he's kind of like pushed to the side. He's not quite as crazy.
I think they suffered from some of the same stuff they did in El Camino, and we'll talk about that later.
Yes, there will
Stay
be El
tuned.
Camino talk at the end of this podcast. I meant to mention it at the beginning, but there will be spoiler-filled review of El Camino at the end.
Okay. But anyway, Tuco Salamanca, came out in season 2, or was killed off in season 2. Since he was introduced, I believe he was introduced in season 1, right?
Maybe in like the last episode of season 1, but it was just very brief.
You don't get much of an impression
Right.
of him, but he ends up. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you've seen Breaking Bad. I won't go over every scene,
Hopefully.
but for such a unhinged, absolutely banana land character, I think he's a little more justified in. I'm gonna bounce a little bit.
That's fine.
taking, Tuco dying, basically. I think
Right.
it's, if right from the get-go you just see him, he kills one of his dudes, like beats the shit out of people. Jesse, he nearly kills. Um, they have a big plan to take him out, and it just,
Well, yeah,
it's,
Tuco kidnaps Walt and Jesse and tries to abscond up because he realizes the DEA is onto him, so they're trying to get off to Mexico, to get away from the DEA heat. And while they're there, Walt is afraid he's gonna figure out that Hank knows Walt and think that Walt set him up with Hank and the DEA, right? So Walt and Jesse formulate this plan to poison him with ricin while they're in his uncle's Hector Salamanca's house.
who's also a old school gangster.
Yep. And so this one, Walt doesn't have a lot to do with the killing other than Hank is trying to find Walt and chases like his car down to Tuco's, and that's why Hank's there, and Hank ends up actually killing him. So I don't know if it really counts, but it also counts. Like, Walt is definitely responsible for Tuco's death because he gets Hank on the scent of Tuco. Um,
That one was weird because he tried really hard and he just could not do it.
mm,
But even with that fucking burrito, I mean, I think I would have noticed the shitty fold he had on that burrito
yeah.
after the
Well, and
fact.
Hector's sitting there binging his doorbell or his little bell, trying to warn Tuco, because he saw everything that happened. Uh, and they just thought Walt and Jesse thought that he was going to turn on them, kill them to tie up loose ends. But that's not what he was doing. He was trying to take them with him so they could keep cooking meth in Mexico, basically.
And making money. And he
Right.
really liked meth. He really liked meth.
Right. And as you alluded to, this was definitely warranted
It
and
was kill or be
justified.
kill.
Right.
For
For
sure. I think
Walt
it
and
would have
Jesse,
ended
it was
there.
warranted, and even for Hank, it was warranted because Tuco was going to kill them or take them to Mexico. So and they didn't want to go to Mexico, obviously, and live out the rest of their life in Mexico or figure out how to get back. Um. So that was, that's the only way to go. And then once Hank gets there and Tuco starts shooting at Hank, of course he's gonna shoot back.
Wasn't he looking for Jesse?
Yes, that's what it was.
So yeah, I mean, I think
He was
they're
looking for
directly responsible for
So
it.
yeah, he was looking for Jesse because Walt had you. Walt
He
had
bought some
told
weed or something.
Right. Walt had told Skylar that he bought weed from Jesse, and when Walt went missing for 2 days or however long he was with Tuco,
Fugue state.
yeah, Skylar got worried and said that he had bought weed, like told Hank that he had gone to Jesse for weed before. So Hank starts looking for Jesse's car. Jesse's car is found at Tuco's place, and that's why Hank is, because he thinks Walt is with Jesse for whatever reason.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's what people
And then
do. Is
yeah,
they
and
just
then he
hang out
comes
with their
back
weed
in the
dealer all the time.
yeah. That's what. Well, I mean, some people do, but like a 50-year-old dude buying weed from a 25-year-old, probably not happening.
Yeah, let's hang out, bro. Buddy, Buster.
So what's the part of the identity that Walt assumes here?
I thought this was weird, but he started rocking the goatee rather than, I mean, which, trust me, he's rocking that goatee. But I never really paid attention to Tuco's facial hair, so it was something
Tuco
I didn't
definitely
pick
had
up
the
on.
goatee.
I just never, whenever he talked, I was always looking at his eyes because he was always like
He's got
doing
the
that
crazy eyes,
crazy.
for sure.
Yeah, it kind of made me laugh a little inside. It's like, oh my god, this dude is fucking bananas. And
Absolutely bananas.
he's bananas, and he does a lot of meth, so that just makes him like extra mushy bananas, and fuck mushy bananas.
One of the things I noticed with the goatee at the end of season 2 was it was the worst prosthetic facial hair I've ever seen in my life. Like,
Was
go
it
back and just watch that
prosthetic?
final episode of season 2. It's terrible. It looks like a cat died on his chin. Like in season
So
3 and 4, 5, like you can tell that he grew his own goatee at that point.
I
But it
never
was like,
noticed that either.
yeah, it was between like the second to last episode and the last episode. They were like, oh, you need to change from a mustache to a goatee. And he's like, well, shit, I need 2 weeks to grow it. And they're like, nah, just throw this thing on your face. You'll be fine.
So really better or worse than Henry Cavill's CGI?
It's the same. It's
Okay,
just as distracting.
that's horrendous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've never noticed it. I wouldn't have noticed Henry Cavill's CGI, but wouldn't have been funny as shit if Jesse just showed up like the next episode and had a goatee.
Like Michael
Like,
in The Office when
yeah,
Brian gets a goatee.
yeah. And then Dwight. Yeah, that would have been
Yeah,
fucking perfect.
that's kind of funny. Um, yeah, I don't know. See, I knew about Henry Cavill's mustache before I went to see the movie, so I don't know if I would have really noticed it if I didn't know about it.
I don't think I would have.
I think I would have noticed that something looked weird, but I wouldn't have been able to be like, oh, it's his face is clearly not his face.
I would have assumed it was the booty production value of
Yeah, I mean the whole
some
movie
of
kind of looks
DC's.
shit. So
Yeah. And it's so fucking dark. It's just like, oh, okay.
anyway, let's
Oh,
move on back to Breaking Bad.
how did we get on the Superman tangent? It's been,
Bad facial hair.
that can lead to any discussion.
Yeah.
I've seen it many times.
Yeah, can derail the best of conversations. So number 3 is a big one, and I'm glad I got it. Jane, I don't know her last name. I probably should have paid attention because she does have a last name. But Jane, Jesse's girlfriend, in season 2. Again, kind of iffy if she counts here because this was if Walt didn't actively kill her. She choked on her own vomit after taking heroin, and he was standing over her and did nothing. Just like he could have turned her back on her side so she didn't choke, obviously, or he could have Heimlicked her, whatever.
Gave her the people's elbow.
Yeah. He really, literally anything, like touch her in any way, and it probably would have been fine. But he just like sat there and watched her die. And I think it counts because in season 6 or season 5, he stares down Jesse as Jesse's turning on him and giving him up to Hank, and says, "I watched Jane die. I could have saved her. I stood there and watched her die." Like in that moment, it retroactively makes it seem like he actively didn't save her, not like he just panicked and didn't know what to do. Like he didn't want to save her because what she was leading Jesse to. Like he needed Jesse, and she was leading him deeper and deeper into drugs, and also pulling him away from Walt's grip, and just like she wanted to kind of be either a drug addict or a normal member of society with Jesse, and didn't like they were gonna run off together. And
she wanted to be Walt to Jesse, like that.
Yeah, she wanted to control
him,
right? And Walt did not want to give up that control he had over Jesse, not yet.
No, and that's I had an argument, not an argument,
So
a discussion with someone on Twitter about Walt's responsibility for that, because we were gonna do this episode a couple weeks ago, but shit happened, so we're doing it now.
Well, man, it was gonna work out so good because El Camino had just come out. We had it timed perfectly, and then I had to go and get sick. Sorry to all the fans who were ready to listen to this right after they watched El Camino. You had to wait 3 weeks.
Guys. That's all right. I mean, it's still fun because you might go back and rewatch El Camino, because I think I will. But I think Walt is inherently responsible because he could have done something. And then, like you mentioned in season 5, when he does that, that's explicitly stating, like, yo, I did this for my own good. Like, this is for my personal gain. So, yeah, I think he's definitely responsible for her death.
Definitely responsible, but was it justified?
No, that one was not justified. I think that was
strong agree there. I feel like even if she had lived, Walt could have talked to Jesse. Like, he could have talked him straight on, getting deeper into drugs. Like, he had such a hold over Jesse. I think he could have broken her in some other way, or at least tried to, and at that moment, it probably did more harm than good for Jesse.
I mean, that's also a point of no return. Like,
he kind of
that man.
Yeah, he dives deeper and deeper into his addiction, and I can't remember if this is right after this is when his house just turns into like the crack den of the neighborhood, or if that was after the little boy got
Brock. No,
after
Brock's brother.
Well, yeah, he got killed, but Brock got poisoned. I don't remember when that was, when Jesse's house basically turned into a crack den.
I thought that
Fresh.
was like right after this.
I thought so too, and it might be. I just some of the things blend together sometimes, and honestly, when I was watching on my second watch through this last time, I forgot Brock and his mom and all of that even existed until it came back up. So,
And I mean, they're a huge part of the story, but yeah, it's kind of weird how they got fall by the wayside.
mm,
Because the same thing happened to me.
same thing happened to you. Oh, you forgot about it.
Yes.
I thought you meant like you had a girlfriend whose brother was, drug trafficking and then got killed, and then but she had a kid who you really liked and he got poisoned and you got deeper into the drug trade. I thought that was the path you were on.
How did you know? Oh my gosh.
You just gave yourself up, man.
I'm embarrassed. I'm so embarrassed. You guys know the true story of Nick from Albuquerque, New Mexico? Your new fucking hero.
So this is a bit of a stretch on assumption of identity. He doesn't really assume any of our identity. She hadn't really built up that much of an identity other than that, like, she likes to draw and she likes Georgia O'Keeffe. Um, but
She's
what
sassy. That's
she is
another thing.
sassy.
She's very sassy.
He keeps the teddy bear eye that falls into his pool from the plane crash that was caused by her father. So he keeps that like in a drawer at his house for years
Weird purposes.
or months. The
Well,
whole thing
it's
only takes a couple years, so.
very odd, series of events. That's for sure.
Mm.
Sitting in a bar next to her, and when he finds that out, it's just that's another kind of shocking blow, especially how they revealed it to the audience. Ooh, yeah, and to have it affect the rest of
I
Walt's
just remember
family.
that pink teddy bear was such like a haunting image throughout the season as they showed it like floating in the pool and everything. It was
a
a
very
really, really cool visual.
Oh yeah, it was very present throughout the whole season. Even they just remind you during the opening of the episode, or you catch a glimpse of it. But I think this was also like another thing signifying this is the first time Walt's really big drug situation, whatever the fuck you want to call it, directly affected his immediate family, like his son and his wife. Like through a weird series of events, they could have possibly been killed by plane debris, possibly. But
Well,
I
luckily
thought
she
that
had
was kinda
left him
weird.
at that point. I actually the first time through I hated Skylar along with everyone else. The second time through
Whew, she was rough.
I'm like, you know what? She's right. He's an asshole and he's lying constantly and she's like trying to call him on his shit and so I identified with Skylar a little bit more the second time through. She's still a little naggy and she smokes when she's pregnant, which is unforgivable, but
Yeah, that's not very cool.
no.
I looked at it like the Hillary Clinton effect. It's
Mm.
just, very capable, very intelligent and strong woman, but she's a little bitchy, according to
Yeah.
a lot of people. So that's a reason to write it. I felt the same way. It was just like,
Well,
oof,
what about
man,
the
she's
emails?
tough.
Skylar had all kinds of emails out there.
Fucking. What about the emails, bro?
The emails.
Investigate them. Ukraine, man, Ukraine.
All right, so take us to the fourth and fifth death. There's two people.
Dude, this was one of my fucking
This was awesome.
favorites, man. I loved it, and it just blew me away. It was in season 3. It was towards the it was a penultimate episode,
Mhm.
and oh my goodness, it delivered. So Jesse's had one of his lower level.
You didn't say who got killed first.
But it's the two rival drug dealers.
There you go. They
I
don't
was
have
gonna
names.
lead into it.
I
had
got
to give
you. Sorry.
the exposition.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So Jesse has some underlings at this point. They're doing pretty well, and one of his homeboys gets shot up
Combo.
because he's Combo. That's his fucking name. I always forget, and I didn't want to look it up.
I wrote it in the notes, man.
He's
On line C.
fuck. My bad.
It's all good. You're
Combo.
rolling. Keep going.
But anyways, he's dealing in rival territory. So they get this little young dude. He's probably 10 or 12 or something like that.
Yeah,
And he shoots
hoppers
Combo.
as they call him in The Wire.
Motherfucking hoppers in Baltimore. So this
Baltimore.
is just the Southwest's version of
Yeah.
it. They're on bikes all the time. But kills Jesse's homeboy. So Jesse wants to, get revenge, especially after he finds out that, this young man was killed after killing Combo, and it was his girlfriend's, little brother, which.
Well, yeah, so Gus tells him, like, hey, no more, because they have a parlay, basically, him and the guys that killed Combo, or, told the kid to kill Combo. They have a parlay, and Gus says, no more using kids, so they decide, oh, well, that means we have to kill this fucking 12-year-old.
Yeah, they murdered.
We can't just we can't just let him go back to his normal 12-year-old life. No, we gotta kill him. So that pissed Jesse off.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it really pissed Jesse off. So he wants some revenge.
Because that was, like you said, that was his girlfriend's little brother.
And he cared a lot about her. And she was absolutely devastated, and that changed their relationship forever. And he's, starts walking up with a pistol, and then Walt just fucking BAM! Runs over these motherfuckers. And that was one of the most brilliant uses
in
of
the Pontiac
CGI.
Oh, he didn't really run over people there?
Well, I mean, they looked like dummies. But for one, let me say, I hate the Aztec. That is my least favorite vehicle of all time. And to see it running over people, it's just like, yeah.
I like it. I like it in this framework, though, because it is just a piece of shit car.
Battering ram. Yep.
Nobody liked them. Even the people who drove them didn't like them. And the fact that he has to drive this car around, it just adds insult to injury. And, like, he can't... He's got cancer, and he has to drive a shitty car. And an ugly color at that. Like, pick a black one at least, dude.
You punk bitch. Poor guy. But I mean, it served its purpose. That was like a $7,000 battering ram. It's cool.
That's the important part, is that it can successfully run over 2 drug dealers if you needed to.
2 child murdering drug dealers. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say
I would bet it could run over any 2 drug dealers.
So watch
but especially the child murdering ones.
My grandma has one of those, so
oh shit,
look out.
But he does. We'd be remiss if we didn't say he gets out and pops them both with a pistol too.
Well, especially like the Goofy, like hold his hand out, like bah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he absolutely, because they were still alive. Right?
Yeah,
one of them was still alive.
Because Jesse was approaching them and he pulls the gun out like way too far away from them to sneak up on them. And they're like, oh, hey, there's a guy coming from, like, a football field away.
Yeah. He's like, hey,
he's got a gun. Hey, let's both take out our guns and shoot him first, because now we see him. And so Walt has plenty of time to run them down before Jesse gets close enough to shoot him.
And
he starts, like, screaming, Jesse does. He looks
very angry, too, so it's like, oh, he's this pissed off white kid walking up to him.
Not a stealthy mofo, that Jesse Pinkman.
But speaking of stealthy, neither is an Aztec. Those things are like a train engine. Like,
yeah, I know. Get a hybrid like Andy Bernard.
Yeah, under 5 miles an hour. They're silent.
Yep, they're silent under 5 miles an hour. That's very smart.
Oh man, we need to make an Office Breaking Bad cut. Oh, that would be so fucking good.
Have you been listening to the Office Ladies podcast at all?
I have been. Shout out Office Ladies podcast.
It's okay. I haven't gotten used to them yet. No. I don't know. It's just like 2 clucking hens.
Basically.
Which is, the one I last listened to was the 3rd episode, and they had Rainn Wilson on. It was really funny because he came on and it was like, you guys would just be over there talking all of the time and cracking up over nothing. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty much what their podcast is, except they're still not saying anything that funny. Or that we haven't learned on the internet in the 10 years that it's been off air.
You're not confirming all that much for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, good for them. I just thought it was funny because Rainn Wilson was talking about, or I think Angela was like, yeah, we're just like 2 clucking hens. And he's like,
yep.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, yes, that's this podcast.
4 stars. 4.
Yeah. It's fine. My favorite Office podcast, at Pod the Office on Twitter, has been barren for quite some time. They haven't been posting anything, so like it fills the gap until they get back, if they ever.
Let's hope and pray.
Yeah. Anyway, was this justified? You're supposed to ask me that.
Calvin, was this justified?
Oh yeah. Definitely. 100%. this was self-preservation for Walt and Jesse. Walt knew that if Jesse started a firefight with these two, he wasn't going to finish the job, that it would create problems with Gus, which really, that was what Walt was going after. Like, it wasn't just that Jesse was probably going to die, it was that Gus was going to excommunicate them if he found out they were shooting up just like out there shooting people nondescriptly.
Yeah, they can't be doing that. That'll draw too much attention.
Yeah, and then they kill him anyways. And Walt's got some problems with Gus after that, but Walt thinks because he did it and he can explain to Gus that it's okay because Walt thinks he can outsmart anyone.
Because he's a wanker.
Do you agree that it was justified?
I totally fucking agree. It was justified.
I think we're gonna be on the same page on most of these.
Probably. It was really, really fucking bogus. And the whole situation was bogus, so I think it was justified that they got ran the fuck over.
Yeah. So this one, I want to go back for a second. I believe it was in season 2. Yeah, it was, because Combo was still alive. It might have been early season 3. With the 2 meth heads that Jesse killed with an ATM.
Dope. Who's talking about you, man?
Not part of this podcast, but I just want to, that is such a hard episode to watch because of that little kid. Like, if that little kid wasn't in it, the meth head's kid, I'd be perfectly fine and, watch them.
That broke my fucking heart.
Yeah,
seeing that
it's
shit,
just
dude.
eating Twinkies and shit, and Jesse's like, oh, just sit on the stoop, somebody will be here soon. He calls 911 for him and everything, but, yeah, the ATM death was pretty cool to see.
It's gruesome.
In a weird way, yeah. But, that kid was hard to watch. That's a very hard episode to watch with that kid in it. He's just such a sweet-looking kid. Sure, he's a ginger, but,
yeah, I mean,
should we hold that against him for his whole life?
No, we can't, because he's taken the form of a child, so we gotta respect the boundaries.
Yeah. All right.
That was sorry, I gotta say this.
Yeah.
That was the first time, I don't know, the drug trade really wasn't entertaining to me in this show.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, oh, this does affect kids,
yeah.
big time. See, as well as whatever his name was.
You see, the real world effects, yeah.
Yeah, it was bad news bears.
Now, see, the little brother, the 12-year-old that got killed in this, he chose to be in it at that point in his life, right? And I know he's a 12-year-old and he shouldn't be making his own, there's all that goes around, and still, just because he's 12 and he chose to be there, he doesn't deserve to die. I get that. But, he made choices that put him there. This little kid from this family was just stuck. His parents were pieces of shit, and he had to deal with that and had no way out of it, and he just thinks this is what normal life is. It's not, kid. It'll get better.
Yeah, I know someone like that. Yeah, it's taken a long time to get better for them.
Yeah.
So it's don't do this to your children, folks.
No, don't be meth head.
Yeah, fuck that.
Shout out to Jesse, though, for covering his eyes past the dead parents, so that you don't add that extra trauma of seeing them dead. He's gonna know that they died at some point, but seeing the dead bodies would be extra trauma for that kid. So good job, Jesse. Jesse always had a soft spot for kids.
He does. Don't we all though?
Yeah. Any assumption of identity?
The only one that comes to mind is him using kids to, do a little dirty work. That's a boundary that he's seen cross, so he, it's now okay to do.
Yeah.
Specifically, poisoning Brock to fuck with Jesse, basically.
Right. Yeah, he's always willing to do whatever it takes to fuck with Jesse.
As long as he doesn't do it first. I think that's his...
Yeah.
Unless he's talking shit to Bogdan and his fucking eyebrows.
Bogdan. Alright, let's move on to the next one. And this is another not directly Walt kill, but Walt is very much responsible for it, and that's Gale Bedecker.
Yeah, he pushed
Sweet Gale.
Hard.
End of season 3. He dies by getting shot in the face by Jesse. And, again, this one, Walt didn't pull the trigger, but Walt killed him. Walt talks Jesse into killing Gale because Gale is eventually going to take Walt's place working for Gus, and then Gus will take care of Walt. So the only way that Walt can keep his job and keep himself from dying is to take care of Gale, but Walt is in a room with Gus, so he can't like make a move on Gale. Luckily, he has put Jesse in position to take care of Gale for him and calls him to do it.
Yeah, and I mean they discussed it throughout of the better part of the second half of the season, and that was just a weird conclusion for them to make, but it weird, but it made sense. It was just like, man, do they really gotta kill Gale, like the nicest dude ever, singing classical music and making tea in his apartment? So
Nah,
dirty.
I'm against you there. Like, yeah, fuck Gale.
I mean, he needed to
He was
die.
creepy.
He was I don't know if he's creepy.
He was a little obsessive over Walt.
He was very odd, and he kind of wanted Walt's penis, but you know,
Yeah,
whatever.
that's true. So was it justified?
Mm, this is hard.
This is a tough one.
This one was really tough for me, and ultimately, if I had to say anything, I'd say yes, just because, you know, I would like to live. If I had to
Yeah,
put myself in Walt's shoes, like, I really want to live, man. So, sorry, dude.
yeah,
But
I
you can find
agree.
any way to justify it.
I agree. This one's complete self-preservation. It had to be done in order for the show to continue and for Walt to continue. I just wish that the show didn't make Jesse do it. Like I kind of liked that innocence in Jesse that he wasn't willing to go to the lengths that Walt was to keep this going. Like Jesse was always like right on the edge of being like, nah, fuck this, I'm done. Like it's not worth it anymore. And this one, I think this is the one that sends Jesse into the downward spiral where his house becomes the crack den, basically.
This one's super broken. Like,
Yeah,
he does not like killing people, which is very understandable.
right. Like that was he had killed people in the past, but it was always kind of last resort type thing. This was he didn't even know Gale, and he's told to show up in his house and just shoot this dude who's in there making tea and singing to himself.
You know, or else we're gonna die.
Right.
Like, them's big stakes.
Yeah. And then so Walt takes from Gail Bedecker, he takes the book of Walt Whitman stories and the knowledge and the affinity that goes along with that, and later becomes his downfall because Hank needs something while he's taking a shit.
Yeah, and he digs through an entire pile of stuff to find a book. It's like, nah. Grab the first thing off the top.
Yeah. When you're in somebody else's bathroom, you just grab what's on top.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not taking a shit in anyone else's house, so there's that.
There's very few situations where I would, but like, you got to think this is they're brother-in-laws. They're over at each other's house all the time. It'd be like going to I don't know, like if I went to my brother's house, I would take a shit in his house before I would take a shit in like one of my daughter's friend's parents' house.
Just go over there like, hey guys, I really gotta poop.
Well, no, like if my
Is that
daughter's
chill?
there hanging out.
Exactly. Your daughter's, drop her up like, hey, go inside and play, honey. Hey, can I use your shitter?
I'll just be like 20, 35-minute stops.
Do you have anything to read? I don't want this.
No, we've got
better have
smartphones now.
sharpener.
You got any Walt Whitman in there?
Yeah, I'm looking for some Walt Whitman. Wink, wink.
Oh,
Nod,
you get
nod.
the big one next.
Yes.
This is a good one.
And
Oh, you get two good ones in a row. That's fair. I've gotten most of the good ones so far.
yeah. I'm a
Go with
lucky
it.
guy.
Who's next?
Motherfucking Gustavo Fring, who I thought
El
was,
Pollo Loco.
if out
No.
of any other
Oh,
like
Los
gangster,
Pollos Hermanos.
yeah, Los Pollos Hermanos chicken. But out
Looks
of
so
any,
tasty.
I could really want. They have like a recipe out there for supposedly what it's supposed to be, and I'd love
I
to
had
try it.
I got like in a Geek Fuel box an apron, Los Pollos. I don't know why I keep calling it Pollo Loco, but Los Pollos Hermanos apron for like barbecuing and shit. I don't think I have it anymore, but I did.
That sounds pretty yummalicious.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he is top 3 best gangster villain,
Absolutely.
type dudes that I've ever seen it portrayed in movies or
I'm
television.
I'm more impressed with him and his longevity in this series than like Avon Barksdale in The Wire.
Yeah, I mean,
And the thing, So I took so long to watch The Wire, and all I had ever heard about was Avon Barksdale, right? And like he's the villain of the show, but like he's not. He's in like the first season. He gets out for a little bit in the third season, and then he goes right back to jail. He has one scene in the last season, and then everything's about Marlo Stanfield. Stringer Bell's got a couple seasons where he's pulling string. But like I had always just heard like Avon Barksdale. I'm like, oh, cool. So this guy's gonna be like a real foil to McNulty and crew for the whole run, and he's just not. But Gustavo Fring, on the other hand, was a badass throughout the series
Oh fuck yeah! And I mean, he had Walt on his
for like a
toes
solid three
every step of
seasons.
the way,
Yeah.
which was really
Well, he had
awesome to
Walt and
see.
Hank and the cartel and basically everybody. Like he was playing 4D chess when everybody
And
else was playing like fucking shoots and ladders.
yeah, I mean, he was living in year 3006 instead of 2006, and to see Walt on his heels
You didn't
like
like
that
my metaphor?
after I did, I had to add to it and try to one up it
Let us know on
because
Twitter which metaphor you liked better, at APA something or at alone_podcast. We're there.
please do. Let's do a poll. But yeah, I really I forgot where the fuck I was. Oh yeah.
Gustavo Fring.
But to see Walt on his toes like that, it kind of helped bring his immortality a little bit down. Like he'd pulled off a bunch of crazy shit and was
He all
somehow
of a
not
sudden
in
wasn't the
jail.
smartest in the room anymore.
Yeah. Well, or the most creative and
Mm.
and yada yada. But he did end up getting the last laugh. He took advantage of literally Gustavo Fring's one fucking weakness and blew him up, which was very, very cool to see, especially when he walks out and adjusts his tie and it's like,
Which I'm pretty sure is physically impossible. Like if you get blown up and half your face is gone, like I don't think you can walk out of that room. But I would never take back that scene for anything.
no.
Like I
I
don't
mean,
care that it's physically impossible. Like that's fucking dope.
yeah, that's not what I cared about. I was just like, whoa, that dude
Well, and
is totally mutilated.
you're like, holy shit, how did he live? And then he just crumples, and you're like, all right, cool.
It was almost
Like, is this really Batman? Is this Two Face now? Like,
what the fuck's gonna happen?
yeah,
They're not going supernatural route. It was almost like I don't know. Speaking of taking a big shit at people's houses, it was like a very relieving dump to see Gustavo Fring finally dead. It's like another crest that they had reached and finally
right.
gone to the other side
And
of.
now it
And
was what's gonna stand in Walt's way moving. Is there even anything that can?
is he truly immortal now? Basically, is how I looked at it.
He was until somebody had to take a shit. It was all going good till he let Hank take a shit.
That motherfucker! No pooping in my house. None.
Yeah, there must have been a really strict no shitting rule after that in the White
There's
House.
thousands of signs posted
Yeah.
everywhere. Like, there's no shit
Bathroom
here.
out of order. Sorry. Go somewhere else.
Yeah, peace.
There's a 7-Eleven down the road. You'll be fine.
We live in Albuquerque. You can poop outside. It's allowed here.
So why was Gus killed?
Because he was a punk bitch.
Well, that's just not true. Now you're just
No,
making shit up.
because he was gonna murder White's entire family and basically told him so that everyone you love is going to die. And
Yeah, it's a
going
rough
to
look for my dude
erase-
Gus.
Yeah, basically just I'm gonna erase you off the face of the earth and no one will care.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Tell me how you feel about that.
You're supposed to ask me a question.
I'm getting there, Calvin. I was worried about you. Is this justified?
Yes, it's justified. But
Why?
I have
You
to
tell
say,
me why right now.
I have to say that Walt kind of brought all this shit on himself. Like
He brings everything on us.
well,
on
yeah,
himself.
that's true. But he kept thinking he was smarter and better than everyone else he came up against with. But as we said, Gus wasn't that, right?
No, he was an unmovable object, and
Right. And
the
he
foil.
butt heads with Gus this whole time. He always thought he liked Gus and the way Gus operated in the beginning, but I think there was always part of him that thought, I don't need him. I need to figure out how to turn into him. So he wanted to be partnered with Gus so he could figure out the steps to take to become Gus.
Yeah, you want to cut out that middleman.
Right. Do you think it was justified?
No. No, I
No.
don't.
Let
Mostly
his whole
because
family die?
well, there's that. I don't think Gus would have killed his entire family. I think if Walt would have chilled the fuck out,
I think Gus
he
is a
would
badass and would have done anything he said.
have. I don't. I just have a hard time seeing that symbiotic relationship crumbling, especially if Walt stops being a dick, because he pushes it big time.
That's true. But they had already kidnapped Jesse at this point, too, so they had Jesse to cook if Walt didn't return. And I don't think he was going to kill Walt, just his whole family. So he could have still been there. They could have locked him up like Nazis.
Speaking of, ba, ba, ba.
Well, they're not next.
No, I know.
So does he adopt anything from what's his nuts? Gus?
He does, like, when Gus basically kills that entire fucking compound of the cartel, you see him leaning on he puts a towel on the floor before he vomits, and Walt starts doing the same thing when his cancer comes back.
That's exactly what happens. And that was like the first time I noticed it, and the first time that I came onto this theory, my first watch through, like it had started gaining some ground right then because that was a very obvious thing. It's a weird thing to do of like taking the towel off the rack, folding it under your knees, kneeling on it, then throwing up. Like usually when you throw up, you're just rushing to the bathroom and getting that shit out. You're not taking the time to, make it nice.
And he didn't witness that, did he?
No. And so that's another thing that it's completely subconscious because he never saw Gus do that. Gus just, he poisoned everybody at the cartel compound and, excused himself to the bathroom. Walt wasn't even in Mexico with him. Jesse was there.
So that's super. It's meta.
Yeah.
I think it's his like transition to a more tightened, robotic type drug dealer,
Right.
Which is more
he's
efficient.
ready to be Gus now.
Well, yeah.
So that brings us to the next two deaths, which are kind of boring. They're just two random Gus henchmen in season 4 after Gus is dead. They have to tie up loose ends. These guys are holding Jesse hostage in the laundromat, forcing him to cook the meth. Jesse just gets held hostage by a lot of people. He's kind of a little bitch. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Walt goes there, shoots them both, ties up the loose ends. This, in my mind, is justified. Like, if you're gonna kill Gus, you gotta get the whole power structure out of the way.
Yeah, you gotta tie up loose ends. You can't let it be like a Caesar situation where everyone just struggles.
Come
for
at the
power.
king, you best not miss.
Yep.
He doesn't adopt anything from them because they were barely characters.
Yeah, they can eat a dick.
Wow, that's a bit harsh.
All
right.
Fuck these guys.
So it's back to you again, because I got the boring one.
Well, this one will be entertaining.
Yeah,
These
you
next
got a great.
several are very good. Mike Ehrmantraut. We
Kill a
see
Mike.
Walt. Mike is a phenomenal character, and I'm so glad he's in Better Call Saul as well.
Yeah, Better Call Saul is pretty boring except the Mike stuff. Like, I really like the Mike stuff.
He's great.
Could not care less about Saul's brother. Can't go outside. Like, has to tinfoil his whole house.
I mean, that does suck, but it's just like, you are a bitch. But anyway, Walt takes him out in season 5. He just shoots him in the gut because he doesn't get the response he really wants, which he does it completely out of just straight anger, which is one of the few times you ever see Walt.
He really breaks, yeah.
Oh yeah, he never does that any other time that I can remember. He got mad,
not to that
him,
extent,
and immediately regretted it. Like, he's never regretted really killing anyone. I don't think he regretted watching Jane die. He's very sad, honestly.
He had an inherent internal reason for killing or letting everyone else die that we've mentioned here. With Mike, there wasn't that. It was just a crime of passion, basically. He got pissed off and he pulled the trigger.
And that was it. And it was I was waiting and waiting and waiting for them to have a confrontation because they butted heads for a while, but I did not expect Walt to just wheel off and shoot him right in the, shoot him to death.
No, yeah, there was definitely something that had to come to a head between them because it was like Walt kept kind of threatening Mike, and Mike would just be like, Walt, I'm not, or he'd call him Walter. Walter, I'm not the dude you want to fuck with. And
Basically,
Walt didn't accept that. He was like, no, I'm the one who knocks. I'm the king here. You guys just need to do what I say.
yeah, and you need to protect me. So watch out for these motherfucking guys that are gonna turn on me because they're his guys. They're my
Exactly.
guys.
Yeah, so Mike's got like a list of people that may turn on Walt, and he needs that. Walt obviously needs that list to take care of these guys, and Mike won't give him the list. He's like, I'm not watching anybody else die.
I'm peacing out.
And as we've alluded to, totally not justified. Mike's on his way to flee the country. Walt could have gotten the names from Lydia or somewhere else. He was just being impulsive and wanted to flex his power at that time.
Shot one of like the best characters.
Mm.
Like a dick.
Shout out, Mike.
Yeah, Mike Ehrmantraut, you're a G.
Yeah. And so, what does Walt take from Mike?
He starts drinking whiskey on the rocks, which
This is
is
true.
very delicious.
Yeah. Gotta have the rock.
Yeah, I can't. Gotta let it get a little watered down. And then taking yes for an answer.
Yeah. So early in the show, he has whiskey with Hank, and he drinks it neat. And then he sits down at a bar with Mike at one point, and Mike orders whiskey on the rocks. And then later in season 5, Hank offers him another drink, and he asks Walt if he wants it neat, and Walt corrects him and says he wants it on the rocks. So, like,
Yeah,
in Walt's mind,
neat, right?
yeah, in Walt's mind, like, this is something he's always done, is liked it on the rocks. And Hank's like, what's going on? Um, and then, yeah, at one point, Mike tells Walt, learn to take yes for an answer, and then that gets reflected in a conversation with Walt and Lydia, where he's trying to convince her to do whatever the hell he's trying to do, and he says the same thing to Lydia, learn to take yes for an answer. So he kind of brings some of Mike's mannerisms into conversation.
And it's hard to say. I totally agree, and it's hard to say that he can get more cold, but I felt like he got even colder after this because Mike is a cold-blooded dude. Like, he's cold-blooded as shit. And Walt gets a little more of that, I think.
Yeah, he gets... So I think, like, after Gus, he gets more collected and proper, as Gus was. And then after Mike, like you said, he still holds on to that from Gus, but he also tries to be more intimidating at this point. Because that's kind of what he always witnessed from Mike. So now he's not only the one running the show and being the brain, he's doing everything. He's Gus, he's Mike,
swagger.
He's the cook. Like, yeah, he's everything in the operation now.
Say my name. Such a good one.
Which brings us to Hank Schrader. ASAP Hank Schrader dies in season 5. Again, not at Walt's hands. The neo-Nazis, Todd's uncle and friends, come and kill Hank in a shootout. Yeah, they're just hanging out, having a few beers.
And Gomi.
Yeah,
poor Gomi.
Yeah, Gomi was there too. But Hank's the one that matters. Hank is in the process of arresting Walt. Walt calls Todd's uncle and is like, "Yo, get me the hell out of here." And the Nazis, try and come to save the day after Walt calls them, and then Walt realizes that Hank's there, and he's like, "Oh no, don't shoot him. Just let him arrest me," apparently. Do you think this one was justified? This was a tough one.
I don't think so. Because Walt's way too smart to not have realized that something had to come of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just too much information.
Hank does a really good job of keeping it to himself once he figures it out. Like, he takes that shit and then waits a good few weeks. Gets Jesse, gets him to confess, all that stuff. And then decides to move and does a really good job at moving on Walt. It's just Walt overreacts again. This is another time when Walt's impulsivity hurts him.
Yeah, I mean, he's just so desperate to survive or to, keep going on his little mission.
Keep his money, because he thinks Hank has gotten his money. So he doesn't even know what's going on, or he thinks Jesse's gotten his money, maybe. It was Hank or Jesse. He calls the Nazis on his way out there and gives them the exact coordinates because he thinks somebody's got his money and that person needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, you can't have my $80 million.
Right.
So much fucking money.
Yeah, I can't really blame him. That's a lot.
That is a lot of money.
I agree with you. For Walt, it's not justified in getting Hank killed. To be fair, he does try and stop them, not very hard. Like, he yells at the dude a couple times, but like he was there kind of willing to turn himself into Hank at this point to avoid Hank from dying. On the other hand, it is justified by the Nazis because they needed Walt. They needed him to cook, and then they needed his money, which they assumed was out there because he gave them such exact coordinates. So, like, I get where the Nazis are coming from on this, on like their whole outlook on life, but I get why they shot Hank.
Well, they had no choice. It was evident, like, when Hank says he made his decision 10 minutes ago, it was evident. When you look back, it's like, yeah, Hank definitely made his decision, or not Hank, but whatever. Uncle Todd.
Todd's uncle.
Tom.
Yeah, I don't know
uncle. Uncle Jack. That's
Uncle Jack. That's it.
My Uncle Jack. And it's like, shut the fuck up. I hate you.
So now, after that, Walt starts drinking his whiskey neat again, because that's how Hank drinks. Very back and forth on the whiskey. He just needs to pick away. Yeah. All right, who we got next? We only got two more. Well, a lot more, but two more categories.
We have, honestly, my favorite kill of this show.
That was going to be one of my questions at the end.
Oh, dude.
That's fine. Now we know.
Yeah. Lydia, obviously.
Mine is my next one.
Nice. It's up there for me, too. But anyway, Lydia is killed basically at the very end of season 5? Like when they're doing, all the run through. Walt had noticed that she always took stevia or whatever the fuck it's called in her coffee. So he basically...
Tea, but yeah.
Tea. And he goes to his old house, his old condemned, his old Heisenberg house, and retrieves the ricin that he had stashed behind the wall socket, and ends up poisoning her tea. And they're having a phone conversation later on, and he basically you got the symptoms of the flu, yada yada. So it was another instance of Walt tying up loose ends, basically, and making his legacy end with him, because without her major exportation,
she was the one running the show, bringing in the methylamine, which is a ingredient that they need to make meth, apparently.
Yes, and it become huge in the Caucasus and the East, basically, Eastern Europe.
Right, and she's helping facilitate her company bringing it in and getting it to first Gus, and then Walt, and then the Nazis and whoever else. So this is kind of putting in, meth is still gonna be out there, but it puts an end to his brand, basically, because the methylamine was what gave it the blue color and the extra potency.
Well, and it's just that way there's no knockoff. That baby blue dies off with him.
Exactly. Heisenberg is gone forever.
Yeah. It was just, I absolutely loved the way that was very, just satisfying. He was very cocky, even though Walt had lost basically everything. He was a fugitive. That was great. It was a little win, I think, which is terrible to say because they had so framed him as a anti-hero almost, or someone you relate to, and he's totally not. He's a piece of shit. So
big piece of shit.
Yeah, it's bad to feel grand that he won a little bit, but yeah, he won a little bit.
He won as far as Walt can win. And I'm with you. It's justified for Walt, but at the same time, it's not. Like, she had a kid, she's a single mother, and that kind of sucks for that kid. She wasn't causing any of his trouble. But at the same time, had she lived, it would have just kept going. Like, she would have found somebody else to cook. She would have found new people to bring the meth to. Like, they would have figured it out. But cutting off the supplier is the best way to cut off a big chunk of the supply.
Well, yeah, and if she got busted too, she would have rolled on Walt
Oh,
so hard. So just
abs-
another self preservation, basically.
yeah.
So yeah, did she assume anything or did Walt assume any traits of hers?
No, Walt technically died before she did. Actually, I think in El Camino, and this is just a brief spoiler for El Camino, so just like shut your ears for 10 seconds. I think it says she's like in the hospital in critical
Yeah.
condition. Like, she hasn't
Yeah.
actually died yet still.
So it's very.
But she's about to.
I mean, this is just a couple days, but
Yeah.
It's banana land.
Yeah.
It's banana land.
So the final kills comes from Walt. He kills all of the neo-Nazis except Todd. Jesse got to kill Todd. Good for Jesse. Chokes him out with some handcuffs.
Yeah, that was brutal.
And I just want to mention, we kind of left out, I think, 9 deaths that Walt's responsible for of all of the people on that list that he was getting from Mike. He had Uncle Jack kill in prison, basically, because Uncle Jack's got his Nazi connections in prison. So there's 9 deaths that we didn't, but I'll throw them in here with the Nazis. So this happens in the very last episode of season 5. He's got a big ass Gatling gun mounted in the trunk of his car that is remote controlled.
So dumb.
And the reason he's killing him is because 1, they stole his money, 2, they kidnap and enslave Jesse, 3, he's tying up loose ends, and 4, they're just shitty people because they're Nazis.
Yeah, fuck them.
In my mind, this is totally justified. I mean, just see the last point. All of those things, right?
Yeah, I think it's completely justified.
And it's the only way he can move on with his. I understand he dies too, but like that's the only way he can die at peace.
Exactly.
He did a lot of terrible
and they
things.
killed Hank. So
Yeah.
I mean, his life is completely fucked, and he is super selfish and wants to blame anyone else but him.
He's been living in the tundra of Connecticut for the last 6 months or whatever. Like, he has nothing left. He does get a chance to leave all the money he does have left to Walt Jr. and Holly.
Also
but,
a very good scene.
Yeah, really good with Badger and Skinny Pete out there shining in their lasers. It's just he needs to be at peace with himself. He always told himself he was doing it for his family. At some point that was true, but at another point it was because he liked the money and the power and everything that came with it. So he needed to get back to there and actually complete this mission for his family. Because if he doesn't take care of them and they find out he kills Lydia or they lose Jesse, like, they're going straight after his family to try and get him back.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it came full circle with that.
The only thing I could think that he assumed from the Nazis was also death.
Yeah, he was just like, hey, I like what those guys are doing. Huh.
That looks comfortable.
Yeah.
Let me get in on that action.
Are you guys planking? Is that what the kids call it these days? Let me try.
So, that's all the deaths. In your mind, what was the most impactful death that Walt was responsible or involved? Most
Honestly,
impactful for the story overall?
I think Jane. I think that was, Gustavo is a big one for sure. But I think Jane really set off the course of events with Jesse that just kept Walt, basically kept his focus from being entirely on being a kingpin.
I agree. I think Jane had the biggest ripple effect in that it kept Jesse with him, it kept Jesse under his thumb, it kept Jesse from going down deeper into drugs, it kept Jesse from going to rehab, it kept Jesse from being happy. And all of this with Jesse affects Walt in different ways. It affects Walt's family in different ways. It affects his relationship that he's trying to get with Gus. It affects things with Hank. It affects a lot of people on a plane. Like, it just has this huge ripple that had she not died, everything would have been different. And something in good ways, some things in bad ways. If Gus doesn't die, you can think of ways that nothing really changes. If Hank doesn't die, there are ways that things can kind of keep going. But with Jane, everything's different. if she lives.
Yeah, everything. I mean, I couldn't have said it better.
Which brings us to the other end of the spectrum. Which death was the least necessary, or like who could have lived in any of these scenarios, and like it would have just been fine.
Mike, I think.
Mike.
I
We
don't
talked
think,
about that when we went through Mike, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Mike would have rolled. He would have
No,
just
Mike's a
disappeared.
G. He knows what he's doing. He would have gone to Belize, as Saul says.
Yeah,
I guess he
would've
did
kicked
go
it.
to Belize, as Saul says, because that's what
That
Saul.
means.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't
But
go
he
to
could have gone to like Brazil or something. But he was out of there. He wasn't going to tell on anyone. They would have been able to keep doing what they're doing. The only thing that would have changed is those 9 people in prison would still be alive. Maybe. Walt probably would have got that list anyways and taken care of them.
maybe at some point. It's definitely, easier with Mike around, I guess. Just
Right.
useful information.
All right, so that is all the death that Walter White was responsible for. Really interesting to dive into it that way. We get to talk a lot about the show because it is a show about death and destruction around this person who goes from, as Vince Gilligan says, Mr. Chips to Scarface. Like, it's not just about him and his family. All of this death and destruction is a central part of it, and it turns him into Scarface.
And he enjoys every second.
Yes, absolutely. So, if you haven't seen El Camino, thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter at APA something. If you have seen El Camino, keep listening for the next 15, 20 minutes. And we're going to give a quick little review.
Here we go.
Okay, let's talk El Camino. I mean, I'll put a sound effect in there. You don't have to.
But I wanted to.
Okay, let's hear what you got.
Oh, fuck. That was it. There you go.
El Camino. The movie about what happens to Jesse Pinkman after he drives away from the Nazi camp. What'd you think?
Very lukewarm.
Yeah.
Like
we were
super lukewarm.
Yeah, we were talking about it before we started recording. My impression directly after, I turned to my wife and said, that was good, but completely unnecessary.
I mean, I could not have said it better. I honestly did not watch it all in one setting. It was one of those where I was just like, and I'm going to go do the dishes.
Yeah,
and
it was
laundry.
definitely a good background movie. Which Breaking Bad was always kind of like that too. In that, like there are these long, drawn out, kind of silent scenes where things aren't really happening. Like it's just setting the scene. He takes a really long drive up to like the tow truck place or whatever. You have those long scenes where you can really get into doing other things. My wife and I watched it after our kids fell asleep early one night, and we went out and watched it. And our plan was to just be like, oh, we'll just watch the first hour and then we'll watch the second hour tomorrow. And we were doing fine, so we just ended up watching the whole thing. We were going to break it up, and it didn't happen. It was good. I enjoyed it. I don't know that I need to revisit it. I rated it on my little movie tracker app 7 out of 10, which because it was really good. It was well made. It just it's completely inconsequential.
And it's too late. It's too late.
It's either too late or too early in a way. It's fun to watch. Like, I'm glad we got to see what happened to Jesse. I just don't think it needed to exist. I honestly think the speculation that's been going on for the last 6 years of what happens to Jesse is more interesting than actually seeing what happens to him.
Yeah, it was just like, man, this is trying so hard to be Breaking Bad levels of intense, but it's just not.
It's not. There's nothing there that's that intense.
No, it's very bland.
I liken it to. I've seen a lot of things around about The Shining lately, so it's really in the forefront of my brain. And I don't even like The Shining that much. There's just been a lot on it. So I liken it to. It'd be like if in The Shining they had a prologue where we see what Danny the kid does right after he escapes. And I get that this new movie or show that's coming out with Ian McGregor, Dr. Sleep, is kind of what this is, but it's more Danny as a grown-up and how things have affected him and how he is as a grown-up now, not what happens right after he gets out of the hotel,
For the next 20 years until he becomes a grown-up.
Right. And so that's what I'm saying about maybe it was too early. Is if El Camino happened, okay, what's Jesse doing 20 years after the events of Breaking Bad? Like he got out. Where is he now? And how did he get to? Like if we just see him in Alaska, that's not fun. But if there's other things going on, then yeah, there could be some really cool stuff in that. And then we can kind of see these steps that got him there as well. But honestly, I thought the most interesting parts were his reflections on things that we didn't see during the regular run of the show, the things with Todd and
Yes,
with Mike and
for
with
sure.
Walt, the flashbacks,
Hmm.
with Fat Todd, and Jesse put on a
Fuck
little
Fat
bit of weight
Todd.
too.
He,
But
he
yeah,
did put on a little weight. They
I,
did a
I
pretty good job.
Todd's a psychopath, but I kind of really like the scenes in his apartment where he's just like, yeah, had to kill my maid.
Yeah,
She found my money.
Yeah, it was in books.
I don't even know. I
No
wonder what she was
reason
looking
for
for in M. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious. You want some beans? But
Yeah, we got
it just,
soup. Oh,
It really pulled me right out of it. There was a specific scene where Jesse's in his cage and Todd wakes him up, and basically it's from Jesse's point of view looking up through the top of the slatted bar cage at Todd. And the way they fixed the camera is blocking Todd's double chin
yeah.
and most of his face, but you could see his belly poking out of the bottom of his shirt. And after that, I'm just like, okay, this is just kind of dumb. I mean,
Yeah, and
I'm not there in this just happened. It's
yeah.
like
The
this
the
is
Todd
like
scenes kind of take you out of like, well, this is what happening while Jesse was locked up because he's so fat. Like, and he's not. They're not covering it up in any way.
no,
When
not at all.
when a woman who is in like a sitcom gets pregnant, but her character's not pregnant, like they kind of find ways to frame the shots, and they give her kind of big clothing, so like you can't really tell that she's pregnant, unless she has a huge belly, then they kind of can't get away from it, and usually the actress just leaves for a couple of weeks. But
Usually
they
wears a sweater and
yeah,
it's a done deal.
big flowing dresses, and they shoot her from like the chest up. They're not like focusing on the stomach area, but with this, it's like, okay, Jesse Plemons, here's a shirt we had in your old wardrobe from 6 years ago. Just throw that on; it'll be fine. It still fits, right? And there's no way it fits. Like he literally weighs at least 50 pounds more at this point,
At least
and
every
it's
part
all
of him
and it's
is
all in his
fat.
belly and his chin.
And his eyes.
Yeah,
too.
his whole
eyes look like
face,
he's
yeah.
been drinking for
And I'm not, yeah, I'm not
days.
trying to fat shame Jesse Plemons here. It's just like he did not like. Aaron Paul looked similarly enough that it was believable that this was happening. Like he looked a little bit older, but not enough that you're like, okay, it's fine.
Well, yeah,
Jesse
so did, like,
Plemons
Badger and
was like
Skinny Pete.
huge. Skinny
Yeah,
Pete,
I mean
Skinny Pete got old fast.
well, I think same thing with the guy that played Todd. He aged like
Yeah.
15 years. He looked like he had a boy, little boy face.
Well, Skinny Pete was
And-
always older anyway. Skinny Pete was like 40 during the original run, so now he's like 50. And so like that, those 10 years, like that's a big gap when you think about it in how people age and how they look
10
as they
years.
age. Yeah.
Stint at rehab.
Well, from, like,
two
yeah.
hip replacements.
40 to 50 is a very age heavy gap. Like 20 to 30, you don't change that much. But 40 to 50, you get a lot of extra wrinkles. Your face kind of sinks a little bit. Yeah, so that was rough. I keep coming back to I don't know that we needed it, and that's
It
the
was
hardest
not
thing.
necessary. I like the ambiguity to it. That was something that worked really, really, really well. And quite frankly, the fact that Jesse got away, that's all I cared about.
Yeah,
I
it was
did not care about
cool
anything else.
that he got away from the Nazis. Like, because you think,
Yeah,
because there's a couple options. One, he gets out and gets picked up by the police immediately. But you think he could also probably get himself out of any jail time with everything that he knows and that he was working with the DEA before. Like you think he could kind of work himself out of any trouble he gets in with the police. Or he basically what happens in the movie, he gets to the guy that can disappear him and disappears. And he chooses to go to Alaska, which that's fine. But like I said, I liked the scenes with Todd and Mike and Walt because they added some depth to conversations that were happening off screen that we kind of knew had to be there, but they didn't. We'd never had all the details. We didn't get to see them during the regular run of the show.
Yeah,
Um,
we just didn't know what was said exactly.
yeah, and these things made Jesse a bit deeper and a little bit more of a tragic character than he already was,
Which
which
is
he
hard to
already
fucking
was.
do.
Yes,
Like,
super tragic.
ooh,
Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, it was interesting. Maybe like do a comic book or something on it. Like I
Well, I
don't know
mean,
that we needed a 2 hour movie on it.
no, and something like the movie Fight Club was a book before it was a movie, and
Hmm.
they did Fight Club 2 as a comic book.
Right.
I would read
Put it
the
out as a
comic book
graphic
of
novel,
this.
something like
Yeah,
that. Like,
I would read that.
but I'm glad we have it. But at the same time, I don't know that we needed it.
It was just so overhyped. Way overhyped. And the fact that it was like a Netflix production and they're touting it as like a super big deal, it was just underwhelming.
Well, and we get one scene with Bryan Cranston, one scene with Jonathan Banks, 15 scenes with fucking Jesse Plemons, fat Jesse Plemons.
Yeah,
Skinny
he spent a
Skinny
lot of time
Pete
with
is
Todd.
super involved.
And it
Badger, not nearly
disappears.
enough.
Exactly. It was
Well,
just,
so what happens to Skinny Pete is he gets arrested, or not arrested, but like taken in, and they show that they have that trailer of him talking to the police, right?
hmm
And so that's what we're supposed to assume happens to Skinny. Like that trailer is actually what happens after Jesse leaves his house with his car.
which is, I don't know, that whole sequence just seemed way too easy. Like, it was like a bunch of guys throughout this movie. It was like a bunch of
That
guys
that was the other thing about it. Every little plan that they had worked perfectly.
worked perfectly, and it
Which is
just reminded me of people that knew they were gonna get away with it.
right.
Like there was no, oh, he might fail, like he's gonna get caught. It was just like, oh yeah, and
No,
he's
we
gonna,
know Jesse's going to get to Alaska somehow
yeah, he's gonna
because they
get
open
right
up with that
inside the
scene with him and
apartment.
Mike. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's just,
And that was
madness.
something that never happened in Breaking Bad. There were always stakes in Breaking Bad. If it wasn't like they would always have a plan and either the plan would go awry or they would have to backtrack on the plan because there was something else because they had lives and something else was going on. Like they'd have to backtrack because Walt Jr. needed extra bacon in the morning or something, you
Yeah,
know.
or they just got outmaneuvered. So it's
Right. But there was none of that in this. It was just like let's add an obstacle, but it's an obstacle that Jesse's going to get through. Like let's throw in the towing company and let's throw in he's $2,000 short for the vacuum guy and like all right, we know he's going to fucking get this. Like just get him there if that's what's going to happen or don't.
I will say it did have a really neat scene where he has that Mexican standoff. That was super cool. I
With the two guys in the apartment.
No, with the guys in the in like the mechanic shop
Oh,
where he
yeah,
ends
yeah,
up
yeah.
shooting the dude through his
I
coat.
saw that coming from a mile away though cuz you knew he had the other gun that he stole from his dad.
I honestly was not paying that much attention
Oh,
to
cuz you
that.
were doing dishes, yeah. You missed
Yeah.
that when you were putting the silverware and fucking thing in the bottom.
Well, I knew he took the guns.
Mhm.
But I just didn't notice his hands still in the
Yeah.
pocket, which I thought is a cool sequence of events
It
and
was
like the
really
most
cool.
violent thing you'd
I
seen.
kind of saw it the whole time, but that's not their fault. That's my fault. I don't
Too
know.
good.
Breaking Bad like teaches you to focus on every little detail, and then they in this movie instead of making things like that little details, they kind of threw them in your face more.
They're like, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
Don't go to Reddit to talk about it.
Like
We
if
told you
you
about
watch
it.
the movie again, like you'll see how obvious it is that his hand's still in his pocket the entire time they're there.
Yeah.
Which it is what it is. It was still a cool scene. There was a lot of good in it. It just wasn't good enough to necessitate itself.
Mm-mm. Nope. I think I agree with you.
Watch it if you're a Breaking Bad fan and you haven't seen it yet, and for some reason you just listen to us spoil the whole thing. Go watch it. It is worth watching if you're a Breaking Bad fan. It's not worth rewatching and reliving and that like if I do a Breaking Bad rewatch, it's not going to end with El Camino. It's going to end with Jesse driving away. And I
Yeah.
almost wish El Camino was the story of how Jesse got captured by the police because I think that's more compelling of him going into police custody and trying to work his way out of that rather than just simply outmaneuvering them at every turn and getting to disappear in Alaska.
Yeah, way too easy. And Jesse's not that smart. I'm sorry. Just saying.
Especially after being locked in a cage for 6 months or however long it was.
I think yeah. So I think it was longer than that. I don't know. It was a long time.
Anyway, that's all we've got, I think. Do you have anything?
That's all I got.
That's all I've got. All right. So thank you again for listening. Check out all our stuff on social media at APA something at alone underscore podcast. We've got a merch store over at TeePublic. We've got a Patreon with a lot of cool stuff. And next month, December 2019, is Star Wars month here on a
Star
podcast
Wars,
about
baby.
something. Every episode will be Star Wars related. I think we've got 5 planned, leading up to The Rise of Skywalker, and then even after The Rise of Skywalker. Everything we release in December is going to be Star Wars related. I'm super pumped for it. Even on Patreon, everything we do over there is going to be Star Wars related. So a lot of cool stuff going on. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, me either. I'm ready, dude. I'm super ready.
It's gonna be.
It's gonna be dope.
I'm super excited for The Rise of Skywalker. Binge Mode just started doing their run on Star Wars up to The Rise of Skywalker, so I'm listening to that, getting a lot of extra details on what we're going to be talking about. So if you love Star Wars, stay tuned in December. Listen to all these next 3 episodes too, because they're going to be awesome.
They always are.
But definitely come back in December for Star Wars month. It's going to be really great. And then all of the music for podcasts about something provided by those cats. Go check them out. They're awesome.
And you guys stay sassy.
Stay
Vodka, tequila.